Okay, here we are with C26 Coach CJ Castle. I just thought we'd have a little chat about the course last year and what you remember about it and how we can maybe help some people out with some
Yeah,
tips.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so let's just go. I just want to start with your arrival to Madison. Of course, you had been there before, but where did you stay downtown, and then how was that like vibe for you when you got there to town? You've done a lot of Ironman.
We stayed at, I think it was the DoubleTree Hilton downtown, which the place itself was great. There was some partying going on the night before the race. I remember it being kind of loud, which is okay. You don't sleep a whole bunch anyways. But the place was great. The only thing I would do differently is probably not stay on the run course. Late in the run course, when you run by your place multiple times, it's a little tough to keep moving.
Oh yeah, yeah, I bet. I wonder how many people have. I wonder if people have actually done that. I've heard of people that have, like, I think it was like Florida or something, when they're running by their hotel on the beach, they pull in and just call it a day.
But Madison's great. You know, when you arrive in Madison for the race, it's great. That town's electric. It's super fun. And then having the 70.3 the day before to get pumped for your race is, I really like the way they set that up.
Okay, cool.
Good energy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is cool. And you like the transition setup and all that kind of stuff?
I do. I think it's kind of iconic. You get to run up those helixes and there's so many people.
Yeah.
And that you see that all over the whole course throughout the day. Just the support from volunteers and spectators is kind of unlike any other race I've been at.
Oh, is that a fact? You've been to a
Yeah,
lot.
for sure.
Because I've done, I guess, Louisville back in the day and Chattanooga, and they have good fan support, but I thought Wisconsin, especially on a good weather day, really brings it out. You know?
And speaking of weather, I just looked. It looks, we're not going to say anything too much yet, but it looks real nice so far.
Well, like I always say, I've been to every Wisconsin since 2012, and we had one bad day really out of all those days. Yeah. So it's in the fall up here. It's usually pretty crisp and awesome. So I'm not sweating that too hard. I mean, I think I've been through about as bad as it can be there.
Right.
Anything else is going to be an improvement.
The rain year.
Yeah. All right, man. Let's start race morning. You come down and you sit in the helix and get your bags ready and hang out, and then like how early? Okay, I should first say that you were a podium. What'd you get? Third? Fourth.
I think it was fourth.
Fourth on the podium last year. So you come down and race morning. Talk about your race morning. Like you got your bags all stacked, but do you put things in them after, before the race, or like how do you handle your pre-race situation?
I spend most of my day before the race getting everything squared away that I want. So that race morning is really just kind of like a once over check, and then any nutrition. I'll put my gels and stuff in the bags on Saturday before the race. But my liquid nutrition, I'll make them race morning, come down, put that on the bike, check my tire pressure real quick. I put my computer on, let it go to sleep so that I just have to tap the button and not worry about it finding stuff when I come out of the swim. And then go in and get dressed. I like to carry one of those, it's like a sport water bottle that you buy, just water, and I'll make my own mix so that I can run out of T2 with my own water for a little while, just kind of get comfortable. So I usually put that in my T2 bag on race morning. And then at that point, it's kind of like finding my zen, slow walk to the swim start and start getting dressed.
Right. Do you, so what time did you eat at that?
I think I ate breakfast about 4:30. I know everybody says 3 hours before. It's real hard for me to get up and get food down at 4 a.m. So 4:30, I think it was like 1 egg, some peanut butter toast, a rice cake, and then sort of sipped on an electrolyte drink throughout the morning.
Mm-hmm. And then you'll hit yourself up about 20, 30 minutes before with anything, or no?
Coffee.
Yeah. No gels or anything before the swim, or you just
I'll take a gel. So once we get in the swim corral and they start sending people off, I'll take a gel, and I'll usually carry like a regular water bottle that you buy at the gas station through the swim thing, so that I can either clear my goggles if I need to, have that last sip of water before I get in. And they've got trash cans. You can toss them right there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice.
Try not to go too crazy, of course, with the water before you end up.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when you said coffee, I was like, oh boy, that would just start a fountain of not youth.
Yeah, I meant coffee at like 4:30. Getting ready.
All right, yeah. So you're sipping electrolytes up through the race, pretty much, like a light mix or a heavy concentration.
Just like what a normal concentration might be. So, and nothing like I'm not doing race fueling necessarily. It's something more like a noon.
Oh yeah,
just a little bit of electrolyte and like one water bottle over that hour and a half as you're slowly getting ready.
Yeah, I'm with you. I bring usually like a ice bottle or a bottle of ice water down there because depending on when I get to the swim, you probably started right up front, right?
Mm-hmm.
To the front. I mean, for me, that's like you got to get there a little bit earlier sometimes because it gets jammed up, or you got to fight through the crowd and stuff like that. So I usually fight a little bit and kind of linger about a third of the way back, or something like that, and just to see where I can get. But if I'm in my wetsuit or something, I like to have an ice water to just spray down in it because
that's a good idea.
I get really hot. Because it's a timing thing too, because you don't want to like rush into it. You kind of want to do it as late as possible. But if that line starts moving, the feeling. It's like shit in your wetsuit, and then it starts to be, because you're right. It's all about, for me, Zen in the morning. I try to find some areas where I can get my arms moving around and shit. And it's really hard once you get into the corral to actually loosen up and stuff like that. So, okay, so now you're jumping in the water. You're up front. And how are you handling that race? You got 2 loops, clockwise loops, and you swim out maybe 200 yards before you turn down the long stretch.
I think, to be totally honest, my swim is, always sort of a game time decision. I like to walk into it and kind of approach it like you talk about. Take that first 500 as a nice, easy warm up, lengthen, get comfortable, slowly build into your day. Mm-hmm. But if I have somebody who has great feet come by me and I think I can sit on them, I'll go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
But if I had it my way and everything was going to plan, I kind of ease into it on that first 500 or so. You go out there, you make that first turn, first couple buoys, sort of hopefully settle in, find your rhythm, and can start moving.
Okay. So I'm just, when you say that, if somebody comes by with good feet, and like, is that just something they come by at a pace that looks kind of like a little bit faster than you're moving and you feels comfortable at the moment?
Yeah.
The deal. Mm-hmm. And obviously because like people ask me about that all the time as far as, should I draft in the water and all this? I'm like, you got to know how to do, like practice it because it can, to me, it's just something that needs to be practiced. If you're not comfortable with it and you start trying to do that shit, it could really take you out of your game plan.
For sure. And if you're not a real comfortable open water swimming, I don't recommend jumping straight into the draft because, there is a little bit more contact. The water's turbulent. It can be a little bit more anxiety provoking. So if you're not real comfortable in the open water, then just swim your own race.
Yeah.
There's so many people in the water moving it anyways that you're sort of in a draft no matter what, no matter where you are.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I am, is like I'll start, they have, I think it was 3 or is it 5 people at a time? I can't remember. It seems like
when I just did Louisville, they were sending 4 of us at a time.
Okay. I feel like Wisconsin was 3 last year.
That's a smaller start. It might have been 3.
Yeah. And as you get into the funnel, start getting into the right, center, or left lane. And then last year I kind of got into the right lane, which is the inside lane. And for me, again, I like to just own my first few hundred yards. So I was like, I don't want to be on the inside right now. So when the beep went off, I let the other 2 people go ahead of me and I just kind of curled behind them and just got outside. Because I would have preferred to be in the left, but it just didn't happen. And then I can kind of have a little room out there to then, loosen up or whatever. And then I just get into that first buoy, which is, I guess, probably 200 yards. And then just try to find the line the whole way and stay that line. Yeah. Because you'll probably echo this. The thing about open water is like sometimes, the people will come out of there swimming 500 extra yards just because they're lingering like 10, 15 yards away from the buoy line. So it's kind of a catch. You want to be comfortable, but also you don't want to swim an extra 500 yards,
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So you come around, you do you pace out that first loop, and then, I mean, to me, it's all about how my body feels and stuff. If I know I got a good rhythm and I can just go, I'll just try and go, slowly, I guess, a little more aggressive. But do you mentally think about that, or how do you do you pace out
Not really. I try to pace it as smooth as I can.
the whole day?
Yeah. In shorter races, you might surge here and there to try to stay with a pack or whatever. But in Ironman, it's such a long day that I try to focus a lot more on how I feel, how's my breathing, keep it long and strong, nice and smooth. Don't waste any extra energy. And if you have to waste any energy, spend that on sighting so you don't swim that extra 500 yards.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, think about that. I always think about that. People swim in the pool a lot, and they probably hardly ever sight. And the next thing you know, during an Ironman, they sight 500 times, and they wonder why their neck got stiff on the bike or whatever. Things like that. It's pretty.
And their back hurts. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. So as you're coming in and getting ready to come out of the water, the last few hundred yards or whatever, are you trying to activate your legs a little bit, or is that?
I will a little bit. I'm not much of a kicker. But when I kind of hit the far turnaround, so roughly 3,000 yards, and you're coming back, I'll put just a little bit more energy into the kick just to try to move some blood around. I've had times in the past where I've cramped up, so that kind of helps keep everything moving and not cramping.
Yeah. If you don't move your legs much and then all of a sudden surge out of the water or something like that, that can get weird. Yeah. All right. So you're getting out of the water. Are you getting a wetsuit stripper, or are you just taking that thing off?
I'm just as fast taking it off. I think, do whatever works for you. I think the most important thing with T2, especially at Wisconsin, there's so much energy coming out of the water and people are yelling and screaming, and it's awesome. Just slow yourself down for a minute, take your time. You don't need to sprint up the helix. The damage you can do by trying to pick up that extra minute right there could come back and hurt you pretty bad later. You just take your time and, take it in and mentally prepare for what it's like getting on the bike and heading out.
That's a good point. Yeah. So you'll take your wetsuit off right away out of the water, though, or
I take it off right away and carry it.
Okay.
It seems to come off easier if it's wet.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I personally, I can't, I don't want to lay down again because I get a weird head rush sometimes.
Totally.
So I'll stay up, and I'll definitely take mine off too, right? Kind of where they're stripping, just get out of the way and just take it off and run up with it. I think last year, actually, I left it on the bottom and took it off at the top, but whatever. And then, so you're taking your time, you're just, cause you're going up a hill, your heart rate's up, you're going up a hill. Right. Yeah. And the energy is crazy. So, then you're coming out and you're running up to get your bike. You're still chilling. Are you eating, as you're going? In
an Ironman, I'll try to take a gel in T1.
Okay.
Just as I'm heading out, and maybe sip of water, a little bit of water with that gel, because I try not to take anything that first 20 minutes or so on the bike.
Oh, okay.
I try not to start my nutrition right away. I just try to let my heart rate settle, get used to, being in bike position, and let everything kind of come together. And then once I feel like I've sort of settled in there, I'll start my nutrition.
All right. Did you say 20 minutes or 20?
About 20 minutes on the bike. So, you're running out of town, and it's kind of tough to get your nutrition in anyways, as you're going through the fairground and the bike path area before you get out on the main roads.
Yeah, it is. I mean, cause you hear, that's interesting. And I think, a lot of people talk about just right away getting as much in as you can. And sometimes I wonder, coming out of a swim and you're going back to vertical and all that weird stuff. So yeah, so you said it right there. You want your stomach to settle and kind of get your heart rate back. Where
you want all the blood to move to where it's going to go, right? Because if it's all out of whack moving from swim to bike, you're not going to digest anything. My experience is it sort of starts to set you up for some nutritional problems if you're taking in too much before you settle in.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. So yeah, all right. At Wisconsin, you got the way out to the loop is, I think, 15 to 17 miles. I can't remember. How do you handle the stick?
I think that's probably one of that whole first lap is practice and discipline, right? But especially the stick heading out, because it's early. There's going to be people coming by you fast, and to be disciplined and stick with your plan, I think is It's the hardest thing to do, but the most important thing to do. There's a lot of time to be made up on that course on the second lap if you pace correctly.
Yeah, it is.
So I hold myself back for sure and just try to follow what my plan is, whether that's heart rate, power, perceived exertion, you know, and it's usually a combination of all of it that I'm kind of watching.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because we were looking at the elevation of the stick, and I swore that it was like net down on the way out, but we kind of came to the conclusion that it might not be, and might actually be elevation up, but you don't notice it, yeah, because you feel so, you know. I always typically feel really pretty fresh that first 10, 15 miles. So
yeah, I feel pretty good too.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a really good point. I think it's hard to hold back for sure. You know, the thing about the Wisconsin courses, I also think that a lot of times the wind is behind you on the stick going out, and then it's always in your face coming back. So that stick is like 5 times harder on the way back in.
Oh yeah. Well, and you're, you know, coming in at mile 100 and you're
beat
up from the hills, and you're just like, everything's hard coming back on the stick.
That's what I mean. Even if it's like an equal elevation on the way out and way back, it's so much harder generally because of the mileage, but I feel like you always get the wind in your face too. So that is like, I've talked about it a million times, but you know, you kind of get done with that second loop and you're like, I'm done. And you're not even close.
Right.
You know, it's like that's when the battle almost starts for me.
Well, they always say, right, the Ironman bike leg starts at mile 80. It's kind of true.
Yeah.
You know, that's when the neck starts to get tight. It's when you start to realize if your nutrition plan's working and starting to get a little bit tired.
Yeah. Right. So, all right. So in that vein, you're just trying to get through that first loop and be done with it and think what? All right. You're what? 65 miles in or whatever at that point, 60.
Yeah.
And yeah, so your goal on that first loop is?
My goal in the first loop is to really keep myself in control. I think it's easy to run into all the people that are out there on the hills in Verona and get excited and hammer the hills. And of course we have to hammer the hills a little bit just to get over them. You know, they're so steep, but trying to stay in control best I can and, you know, focus on my race and not necessarily what's going on around me on that first lap. Think about your calories and how you're getting them, because there's places on that course where if you're one of those people that are setting a timer on your watch, you know, if that timer goes off and you're in the middle of a descent, you may not be able to reach for your bottle. You forget about it. That ends up being a problem. So be a little bit flexible with where you're going to eat and think about where you're going to eat. I like the top of hills for that, you know, or long straight sections, of course, but just sort of like thinking about that first lap is setting up the rest of my day.
Okay. All right. And I'm always curious about, because I've never been a huge power guy, but like when you're, like you said, sometimes you got to get up the hill, and are you checking? I mean, like say because I think about 5 miles in, there's the first hill. It's on the stick, and you got to go up there. Are you kind of sort of calibrating yourself on that one to see, you know, you're maybe playing it by feel, and then you're looking down and go, whoa, that's a little heavy, you know?
More often than not, it'll be looking down and being like, yeah, it's a little heavy. Early in the race, I don't look down and think like, oh, I got more in me.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, I'll think about it of like, okay, this is how I feel. Look down. Ooh, like, I don't feel that good. I should slow down a bit.
Yeah. I'm not Superman today. Yeah. It's like literally a governor for you.
Exactly.
All day. And then sometimes I'm sure that, I mean, that's the thing, right? Is like, you can try to, I don't know. My goal on that first loop too is just to really make it feel easy as possible, you know, and, you know, obviously take advantage of certain things, but for the most part, you know, like you're saying, get through mile 65, 70, even up to 80 before you're really making major decisions on how you feel, because there's such a long go, you know? So that second leg.
Go ahead.
No.
I was gonna say, if you're hitting Mount Horeb in the second lap and you're feeling good and you're feeling strong, then you probably paced pretty well, because that's right about when you get into the meat of, you know, that second lap and it's late in the race. So the goal would be to hit that point feeling strong.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. That'd be about mile 80-ish, I bet.
Yeah, I think so. About that.
Honestly, while there's still hills after that, don't get me wrong. That's pretty much Well, of course that you have the big hills, but there's some good stuff out there. I mean, to me, that's the best part of the course is right after Mount Horeb, and that's some fun riding and
Yeah.
kind of energizes you because you're going back into Verona and, you got, anyway. But I think that's a good place to kind of make the call is Mount Horeb. You got to get up that hill and then you got to get through that crappy road in town.
That road is bad.
Get around that roundabout, and then you're kind of going into the, electrifying part of the ride. It's sort of like a lot of rollers, a lot of descents, and all kinds of climbing at the end and over that. But then
start to see some more people out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. Okay, so
I think it's a good place to kind of have a little bit of reflection too, and being like, how's my day going? Do I feel like I'm on top of my nutrition plan? Do I feel like maybe I need to take in a little bit more towards the end of this ride to be ready to run a marathon?
Yeah.
That's about the time it'll start, your body will start to feel, if you're kind of like we said, like if you're starting to feel strong and you're on top of it, great. If not, then you need to think about maybe how you're going to help yourself feel a little stronger in the next 30 miles before that run.
Yeah. So are you ever at a point where, like, say you get that done, you're through Mount Horeb, and then you're maybe onto the, like the last big climb with all the people around and everything like that. And then, you've got pretty much a bomber downhill, and then you're going into town and it's kind of flat for a while or anything. Do you ever think about like, well, I'm going to get up over this thing a little bit harder because I got some time to recover after this? Or do you just take it?
I am much more of the mentality of there's more time to be made up if you can ride that downhill.
Okay.
So if you can hold yourself back a little bit on the climb to have the energy so that you can push on the downhill, you can make up a lot more time than that extra 30 seconds you gain by hammering up the hill. We've talked a little bit about this in the past. We try to keep that power profile as smooth as you can.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you got through the second loop, and then you're coming in back through Verona. You're taking a deep breath and kind of just mentally get ready for the. Of course, did you know what you were facing last year? I mean, because you probably hadn't ridden the stick before that, right? We did the loops and everything, but did you know?
I did the stick when we were at camp last year, so I kind of knew what it was. But it had been 20 years since I raced there, so
yeah,
I didn't. It was, that last 12 to 15 miles of an Ironman course is pretty hard anyway.
Yeah,
that was pretty hard last year.
Mm-hmm. So you found
it was hot. It was hilly. I was by myself, so it was a dark place for a little while.
Yeah,
just had to work through it.
Are you pulling back, or are you just trying to fight through and get done?
Just trying to stay within my pace and plan. Stay within my nutrition plan and get through it.
Okay.
I'm not pushing, but I'm not really holding back either.
Right.
Just kind of, sit in the moment and get through it.
All right. And then you're coming in and you're back on the road. You see the helix on the right. Is that a good feeling or no? When you're riding
Catch-22, right? Like it's a great feeling because you're getting off the bike, but you're like, I got to go up that.
Yeah. It seems like that's no big deal to me at the end. I was like, all right. Then you get off and you're, how do you feel when you give the guy, the person your bike, you're getting off the bike and ready to go into T2? How do your legs feel at this moment last year?
I was pretty wrecked last year.
Pretty wrecked?
When I came in. Yeah, I was. I think that there's so much, seated, standing, all of that throughout the whole course of Wisconsin that when I came off, my legs were pretty jello-y. I was pretty tired. Definitely took an extra, minute or so in transition to gather myself before I headed out on the run.
Yeah. So I think that's an important thing is, because you've been through it a lot, but a lot of people haven't, right? You feel, I remember how I felt the first time I got off the bike there, the first time I ever did that race. I'd never done an Ironman. I never really brick more than, whatever. I was like, how in the hell? There's no way.
Right.
I felt like I could hardly walk. I was really seriously Herman Munster and the whole thing until I got in there and got my shoes on. And so you took a little extra time, you kind of gathered your bearings, and then you sprinted out of there and went and tackled the course.
Something like that. I hear you talk about it on the podcast all the time too, taking that first mile real easy. I make myself take that first mile real easy.
It's a hard one to take easy too, because you're going down the street. And It's all a lot. Well, you got to climb out of transition a little bit, and there's a little bit of a rise out of the thing around the Capitol. But once you get up to the Capitol, it's flat and then kind of downhill for the first half mile or so after that. So
Yeah, and so you just try to relax and, you know, let the flow come a little bit and be patient and be confident in your preparation. Just for the people that haven't done this or have only done a few, realize like we all feel that way.
Yeah.
And it'll come, you know, your run legs will come around.
Your run legs will come around. But I think it's important though to bring up the point that first mile, and I've been talking about it lately, the first couple miles are super important. You can really, you know, it's almost like climbing hills too hard. You can really disrupt yourself if you're not careful. At least I believe that, you know. So
I completely agree.
It's so hard too, because I'm honestly, sometimes once you get running, maybe a half mile in, you start feeling pretty good, especially with the decline. You're like, man, I'm going to go, this is going to be my fastest mile. And that's what happens a lot. And then people
don't look at your watch that first mile, because you're like, ooh, I'm running fast.
Yeah. You just want, if you feel good, that means maybe just pull it back a little bit, you know?
Just a little bit. Yeah. And I kind of think of it with all three disciplines, right? Like on your Ironman day, you should be slowly building into everything.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if there was ever, you know, it's very difficult to do a negative split and things like this, but I think that should really be a grounding attempt, you know? It's like, if you can negative split something out there, you've really done a good job with it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right, you're running through the crowds and then you're out, you know, kind of then you go into that little stadium, or the stadium, and there's a little pincher coming out of that people, you know, I mean, it's kind of cool to run in the stadium. And it's just such a weird, different, feeling on your feet.
That's what I was going to say. That was something I wasn't prepared for. Because when I first did the race, I think it was the first or second year they ever had it. I don't think we ran in the stadium that I remembered. And going in there and
turf where they had concrete under it, you know,
or maybe, yeah. But I remember running in there and my leg, like thinking that was going to be fast, right? Like, oh, I'm on the turf and this is going to be fast. And I remember getting in there and my legs going, whoa, what is this? Felt pretty weird.
Yeah, it's really soft. I mean, in a way it's kind of nice, but it's interesting. Then you come out of there and there's like a little steep ramp that you got to deal with. I'm always careful with that too. You know, it's like real early. All right. Then you run back over to the Greenway. Any what's going on now? You're at mile 5-ish.
Yeah. I think at that point, hopefully your run legs are under you, and just got to try to keep thinking whatever your plan is to stick with your plan. You know, your early parts of the marathon, but getting later in the day, but making sure you're staying on top of your nutrition plan, your pacing plan. I think, again, that's another part where you can get caught up, you know, be patient and realize that, hey, you're feeling good. Let's try to feel good for the next 16 to 18 miles instead of the next 6 miles.
Yeah.
So pace yourself right. Make sure you're eating. Make sure you're taking in fluids.
So I think it was about mile 6 when those hills come in on the first run loop, that hill section, which is really the hills of that course. I mean, there's a couple other ones, but that's the main section where, you know, hills can bite into you, which is interesting. I was looking at the course map this year, and I think they might, I don't know, at least this is how I was reading it. I think they might be changing the run course.
Oh, really?
In the sense of, you know, and how you run and you're running up to the Greenway or the bike path, and the first time you take the right and you kind of go down and do the hills and then come back around, do that big out loop and back. That not goofy, but lonely park out and back. It looks to me like they're directing us to the left and doing the out and back first now, and then coming back and doing it.
Still doing the hills though?
Same course, but they're just, instead of the out and back being last on that section, it's going to be the first thing you do. It looks
so
like
the hills are going to come just a little bit later.
Correct.
Which will sting a little worse on that second lap.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably.
Yeah, but you'll be closer to the end too. So, because then you get over those hills, and then you got like that steep downhill around the corner kind of thing back down to the bottom of State Street.
Yep.
Are you? I mean, I assume you're running those hills. Most people probably walk them, but You're running them.
I'm running them. Be careful on that downhill. I mean, that's steep and it's a quad crusher. If you're, just take your time on that one. Because again, short period, it's a short space. You're not going to make up much time. But if you blow your quads up, you can really hurt your second lap or even your last few miles coming in if you're at the end.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting. Yeah. So if that cuts out 2 miles and that's 2 miles later, you're closer to the end too. So yeah, it's like, that always used to be, because when you come back down, you go up State Street and come back down, and then you hit that bike path, the gravel area or whatever again.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually about a 10K. And that's when you're like, okay, 10K time. But now it's going to be a little bit shorter, I think, if that is backwards. Like I said, I don't know. I was looking at the map. You guys can check it out yourself. But I in some ways, I think it makes sense. I guess. I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter.
It's 26 miles. It doesn't matter how you do it, right?
Right.
It's still 26 miles.
Exactly. So what's your mile 80 on the run course? Well, you're in your plan. You're just trying to get to X, and then.
I mean, it's probably somewhere around 2/3 of your way through. Same kind of thing. 18, 19 miles. I feel like for a lot of people, and for me specifically, and as I was learning this distance, that seemed to be where the wheels really came off, and where I slowly learned that, like, if I've paced right, fueled right, and everything, I mean, nobody's feeling good, but I'm able to continue moving on at that point instead of wheels coming off. So probably around 18 or 19. So you're getting down by the water again, probably at that point, right? Trying to think mileage wise.
Yeah.
Probably down right around hitting that bike path again, depending on what the course does this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, I'm just always interested in the mentality of it. 'Cause say you're at mile 18 and you're like, all right, well, say mile 20, because that's a 10K. And to me, that's easier to think about than 8 miles.
Totally.
But so you got this and you're like, okay, do you just keep doing what you're doing, or do you start thinking, all right, I want to up my effort here a little, because I'm going to try and time this, that I just hit that finish line completely gone?
Honestly, if I can up my effort, I will. Okay. I'm usually not at the point where I can up my effort. It's usually at the point of like, okay, do everything I can to maintain.
Yeah.
And you're probably, I don't want to mess with anybody's nutrition plan. We're too close to the race. But for me, I'll pretty much switch to Coke and water at that point, because I'm so done with gels and my stomach's not liking them, but still trying to make sure I'm still getting some sugar, some calories for that last 10K.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I agree, man. Like when you get halfway through, or basically at mile 18 or something like that, that aid station just turns into a grab bag sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like,
whatever you need, right? Whatever you need to keep going.
Yeah.
And maybe it's potato chips. For me, it's Coke, whatever it works for you.
Exactly. All right, man. Well, and then when you got a mile or so left, obviously you're going to put the hammer down as much as possible.
Well, yeah, with what you can, but you're kind of coming back up those hills. So
I know. Yeah, exactly.
But it sure does look nice when you come around the Capitol there and you see the line to the finish to go left, and that feels pretty good.
That feels really good, man.
Yeah.
Good. I came around that corner once, and somehow I was carrying a water bottle, and I'd run around the corner. I dropped it, and I was like, people are cheering. I couldn't, how you feel to bend over at this point to pick up a water. Like the most embarrassing shit ever. All right, man. Well, and then you cross the finish line and you're a winner, and it feels awesome.
Yeah, so, for sure.
All right, man. Well, I'm going to let you get back to work. I appreciate you stepping in here. And
I hope we found some stuff that'll give some people little things, some things to think about. And
oh yeah, I think
have a great day out there. We'll be out there cheering everybody on.
You'll be out there cheering everybody on. You're not racing the 70.3? No.
Amelia's going to do the 70.3. I'm not. So I'll be out there cheering everybody both days, and Amelia and I will be out there on Sunday for the full.
All right. That sounds good. I'll definitely see you out there. I'll be using your strategies, buddy.
All righty.
Talk
to you later, Mike.
See you, bud.
Yeah.
Bye.